Hello, I'm Suzanne Yates and I'm going to show you some exercises using the ball. And these exercises can be actually quite good for anybody really, but they're quite good for someone who's heavily pregnant but can be at any stage of pregnancy. But they're also quite good if you have got a little baby. So I'm not going to keep changing the baby and not the baby, but I will give you different options. They're also good for women that have pelvic instability. Again, this is fairly common in pregnancy, but not only limited to pregnancy. I have a more detailed video specifically on pelvic girdle instability. But the main thing here is if we're sitting on the ball, especially if we're heavily pregnant, the ball helps to take some of the weight of the baby, so there's a lot less pressure going through the pubic bone. So again, even if you don't have pelvic pain, it can just be quite nice because you've got less pressure. So again, especially at the end of pregnancy. If you do have pelvic issues due to instability, you don't want to have your legs too wide apart in the sitting position, but otherwise you can just have your legs as far apart as feels comfortable. Well, for anybody, even with pelvic instability, some women may need to have their knees a bit closer, some a little bit further apart is okay, generally in line with the hips, but again, it really depends on each person. So just be aware, pay attention to your body, do what feels right for you with all of these movements. So what feels right for me is probably the knees a little bit wider. Make sure your ball is the right size so you're not tilting backwards, especially if you're pregnant. That's not going to be so great either for you or for the position of the baby. But even if you're not pregnant, sitting more upright is great and then is a better position. You can do forwards and backwards movements. Oh yes, let's not forget the baby as we do this. So if you've given birth, then this is quite a nice thing to do with your baby, holding your baby and just rocking forward and backwards. So if you're tired, maybe you have had an episiotomy and it's still healing, but you are comfortable to sit on the ball, but you don't really want to be walking around. It's a nice way of gently rocking your baby. Even if you're just tired, you can sit here and you're getting gentle exercise for the pelvic floor, for the abdominal muscles, and you're also massaging out the whole buttock area, the gluteal area, where there's often quite a lot of tension. So with your baby, just hold them and maybe alternate the sides, and we can do forward and back movements. That's quite pleasant, a nice rocking movement forwards and back. Or you could do circling. With the circling, just be a bit more aware because it's a bigger movement and it may be too much if you have weakness in the pelvis. But otherwise, a nice circling movement, finding the rhythm that feels good for you. And even play around. If you're not so heavily pregnant, you might even want to do balancing exercises, lifting one leg up, checking your balance. If you're not pregnant, even you could lift both feet up, but I wouldn't recommend that in pregnancy. But play, just do what feels good for you to do. So postnatally, we could be holding the baby and just doing some pumping movements for one arm, because our neck and shoulders do tend to get quite tense when we're holding and feeding a baby, and we can do sort of opening, pumping. That's good for the lymph and opening up the other breast side. Obviously make sure that you do it on the other side, and if you're pregnant or not even pregnant but you just want to do some exercise on the ball, then pumping obviously it's better if you're not holding the baby to do both arms at the same time, pumping and releasing both breasts, opening the arms up, so breathing in as you go up and breathing out as you go down. Really opening into the space, maybe even bringing your hands together behind your back and a nice stretch. I'll just show you this one from the side. A nice stretch for the shoulders, opening up the chest. So they're probably the main sitting ones. Oh, well, even slight twisting movements if that's comfortable for you. More of an open twist perhaps if you're pregnant. even just relaxing your neck and jaw. So the other key ones that we can do, which especially are good for late pregnancy, are being on all fours, kneeling. You might want to cover the ball with a cloth for this. And the main thing here is you take the ball and you're going to rest it more on your chest rather than your breast, and certainly if you're pregnant you don't want it resting on your abdomen. But just find a position that's comfortable, and if you have pelvic instability, this is great because your knees are nicely together. And again, there's a forward and back rocking. Just make sure that you're not hollowing the lower back, because that would be, especially in pregnancy, not so helpful. And we rock forwards and we rock backwards. So all fours is also good postnatally, but not in the early postnatal phase. You can imagine if you've just given birth, it's quite an opening position, which is why it's good at the end of pregnancy to give more space to your baby. And especially if you had a cesarean, you need to really wait till that's recovered. So as a sort of general guideline, I say about 6 weeks postnatally before you start to do this kind of movement. But in pregnancy, you can probably do it all the way through and even give birth in this position. So forward and backwards, circling. Now, if you don't have pelvic instability, and also later on postnatally, you can bring one leg up, and even, well, you could still be down on the ball if that's more comfortable for you. Again, a rocking forwards and backwards, or more of a circling opening movement. And this is really good for releasing into this pelvic area, giving a bit of space for the baby. But you may prefer to be more your forearms resting on the ball, and again just a rocking forward and backwards. And also this is great for opening up the front, the hip extensors, the psoas that a lot of people talk about, that can get quite tight in pregnancy. As long as it feels comfortable, this can be quite a good position to work that in, or even again a little bit of circling. So of course you can also do it on the other side, and it's quite good to do it on the other side to balance, to even up. You may find one side feels a bit more comfortable, either for you or for your baby. Even if you're not pregnant, it's actually quite a nice exercise to do. So forwards and backwards, or rocking, or more with your head down. And you can do the other things that we've done. This is quite a challenging one, especially if you're heavily pregnant, to extend one leg while you're using the ball to balance. You might find it's too much, but if not, you can try doing that. Or simply just rest on the ball. That's also quite nice to do. So a few other options for the ball. This is for the more challenging positions. You could in fact put the ball against the wall. This is a good one for practicing squatting positions. So not to do if you have pelvic instability, and definitely not in the early postnatal phases. But you can just use the ball, lean against the ball, put it into your lower back, and just gently come down into the squatting position. Obviously, make sure that you feel stable and comfortable. If you're not sure the first time, do it with somebody near to you. Maybe even hold someone's hands. But as long as you're really pushing back into your space, and I'm only doing it against a tree, you could do it against a wall, and then you just breathing out slowly come down. You could even stay there for a little if it's stable. There's a point at which on this tree it doesn't feel so stable, so I won't stay. This is more stable. But again, play around with what feels comfortable for you in terms of height, even just leaning a little bit back, standing up. So that's another option. So another option is this can be quite a nice one more postnatally, because if you're heavily pregnant, you probably aren't comfortable lying on your back. But if you've given birth, then this can be nice if you've got heavy legs, varicose veins, because the ball is not really compressing on the vein, and if you're comfortable lying on your back, which, as I said, probably not in late pregnancy, but even in the first trimester, if you're a bit tired and you just want to lie down, put your feet up. Certainly the second trimester may be possible, probably not the third, but postnatally, great position. And postnatally, you could be lying with your baby and, you know, getting some nice passive exercise and rest. You could even play with things like moving the ball in and out, so you're getting some movements on your legs. And if you have pelvic instability, these are all fine because you've got not much weight on your pubic bone, and also you're keeping the legs together. The pumping movement is good for the supporting lymph, so if you have puffy ankles, then this is quite a good one. So late pregnancy is often when women get puffy ankles, so I want to show an option if you don't have pelvic instability. Probably a cushion is better. Little baby, I'm going to use you as the cushion, but so imagine it's not a baby anymore. We can just use the ball in the side position. So similar kind of things, we can be rocking with the ball, resting, we can be pushing it forwards and backwards. In this position we could even maybe do a nice stretch for the whole side of the body, opening up the arm and the chest. And of course do make sure that you do this on the other side. I won't do it very long on the other side because I want to turn my back away from you, but do make sure that you do it on the other side. So, and maybe even in late pregnancy you find it's okay to just for a second or two be on your back to then turn to the other side. So another option, and if you're in pregnancy but even postnatally, roll to your side and take your time to come up. If you're not comfortable lying on your back, another option, you can sit on a chair and then you put the ball here and you can do similar kind of movements with your feet. And just be sat in a chair and have your, probably a more comfortable chair than this one, but just have your arms relaxed. And again, could be postnatally, you might just want to put your feet up. So I hope that's given you a few ideas of working with the ball, and play is the most important. Thank you.